There is a declassified document, a real document, from the United States Defense Intelligence Agency, filed in September 1976. It describes an encounter between two Iranian Air Force F-4 Phantom fighter jets and an unidentified object over Tehran. In that document, a U.S. military analyst describes what happened in clinical, measured language, the kind of language trained intelligence officers use when they want to convey exactly what happened without editorializing. And even in that restrained language, the conclusion is remarkable. The document rates the incident as an outstanding report, meaning credible, multi-witness, and unexplained. Two F-4 Phantom jets scrambled by the Imperial Iranian Air Force. Multiple witnesses on the ground, including civilians and military radar operators. An object that jammed weapons systems at the moment of attempted engagement. A secondary object that separated from the primary, descended toward the ground, and left a landing site with physical evidence. And an object that outmaneuvered two of the most advanced fighter aircraft of its era, not once, but repeatedly. This case was presented by the U.S. government itself at a United Nations UFO symposium. It has been analyzed by the Nuclear Connection Project and multiple government-linked research programs. The pilot who led the intercept, General Parviz Jafari, testified about it before the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. in 2007, under his own name, on the record, as a retired general. This is the Tehran UFO incident of 1976, one of the most officially documented UFO encounters in history, and it starts with a phone call. Section 2, the setup. September 18th to 19th, 1976, Tehran, Iran, 11:30 p.m. To understand the Tehran incident, you need to understand the context. It is 1976. Iran is under the rule of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. The United States and Iran are close allies. The Imperial Iranian Air Force is equipped with American aircraft, F-4 Phantoms, F-14 Tomcats, trained by American advisors, operating alongside American intelligence personnel. Tehran is a major city, modern, busy, with an active international airport and a well-staffed Air Force command structure. This is not a remote location. This is the capital of Iran, one of the most monitored pieces of airspace in the Middle East. At around 11:30 p.m. on the night of September 18th, the Imperial Iranian Air Force command post in Tehran begins receiving phone calls. Civilian callers. Multiple. Reporting lights in the sky. Not subtle lights, bright lights, moving in unusual ways, above the city. The duty officer at the command post, General Yousefi, goes outside to look. He sees it immediately. Something bright, moving, above the city. He contacts the Mehrabad Airport Control Tower. The controller there sees it too, and confirms it is not any aircraft on their radar in the conventional sense. General Yousefi makes the decision. Scramble a fighter. The first F-4 Phantom launches from Shahroki Air Force Base at approximately 1:30 a.m., piloted by a trained Iranian Air Force pilot. He heads toward the object at full speed. The moment he gets within a certain range, his instruments begin to fail. Communications equipment, gone. Interphone, gone. He turns around. The moment he turns away, his instruments come back. He returns to base, reports what happened, and a second F-4 is immediately scrambled, this time with a more experienced crew. Pilot, Major Mohammad Reza Azizkhani. Weapons Systems Officer, Lieutenant Parviz Jafari, who would later become a general. Section 3, the encounter. 1:40 a.m., the second F-4 launches. The second F-4 climbs into the dark sky above Tehran. Lieutenant Jafari, in the Weapons Systems Officer seat, has his radar active. They spot the object almost immediately. On radar, it appears to be the size of a 707 passenger aircraft, but it is not behaving like any passenger aircraft. It is radiating light across the spectrum, red, green, orange, blue, flashing in rapid sequence. And it is moving. Fast. Unpredictably. covering enormous distances in moments. Jafari later described it. It was a brilliant object. It looked like a star but much bigger. It was flashing very fast. The sequence of colors was incredible. The F-4 moves closer. The crew is closing the distance. And then, something separates from the main object. A smaller object, breaking away from the larger one, moving toward the F-4 at speed. Jafari's training takes over. He attempts to fire an AIM-9 Sidewinder missile. Nothing happens. The weapon's control panel goes dark. At the exact moment he attempts to engage, his weapon system fails completely. Not malfunctions gradually, does not give a warning. It fails instantly, the moment he tries to fire. And simultaneously, his communications equipment fails. He cannot talk to the ground. He cannot talk to his pilot. His navigation instruments begin to behave erratically. The smaller object that had been approaching turns and returns to the main craft. The moment it does, Jafari's systems come back online. All of them. Instantly. Let that sit for a moment. The weapon systems failed at the exact moment of attempted engagement. They came back the moment the threat passed. That is not a malfunction. That is a response. But the encounter is not over. The second separation. As the crew is still processing what just happened, the main object releases another smaller object. This one does not come toward them. It descends toward the ground, rapidly. Jafari and his pilot watch it go down. They expect an explosion, an impact, something. Instead, the object lands, gently, in an open area of desert south of Tehran, and it illuminates the area around it. Not an explosion, illumination. A broad, steady glow covering a significant area of ground. The F-4 descends to investigate. They circle the landing area. Below them, the glow is still there. And then, it goes out. When morning comes, investigators go to the site. What they find? A beeper, a civilian radio beacon, transmitting from the landing area. Later traced to a nearby civilian aircraft. Possibly coincidence, possibly not. And the ground, showing signs consistent with a landing. Disturbed soil, patterns inconsistent with any conventional impact. But here is what stays with you about the landing object. Jafari later said that from the cockpit, looking down at the glowing object on the ground below them, he felt something he had not expected. It was not threatening. It lit up the area. It seemed to want to be seen. Section 4. The Airliner and the Third Object. This section adds another layer that most coverage misses. Here is a detail that almost every account of the Tehran incident leaves out. While Jafari and his pilot were dealing with the main object above, a third phenomenon was occurring. A civilian airliner, flying in the area, reported a cylindrical object passing close to their aircraft. The crew of that airliner described the object as having bright lights at each end and a flashing light in the middle. They reported it to Mehrabad Airport. It was logged. It remains unexplained. This is important because it means the Tehran incident was not a single encounter between a military jet and an anomalous object. It was a multiple-point event. The ground, the civilian airliner, the two F-4s, the radar operators, all seeing different aspects of the same phenomenon, at the same time, from different positions. The U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency document that was later declassified notes specifically, an outstanding report. This case is a classic which meets all the criteria necessary for a valid study of the UFO phenomenon. Those are the exact words of a U.S. military intelligence analyst describing an Iranian Air Force encounter. Outstanding. Classic. Valid study. General Jafari testified about this case in Washington, D.C. in 2007 at the National Press Club, alongside witnesses from other countries, in front of cameras, on the record, under his own name. He said something that has never been retracted. I know what I saw. I know what happened to my instruments. I know what I tried to do. And I know it was not any aircraft that any nation had in 1976. Section 5. The Declassified Document. The Defense Intelligence Agency Report. The most important piece of evidence in the Tehran case is not a witness account. It is a document. A report filed by the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, the Military Intelligence Service of the United States Department of Defense. Classified at the time, later declassified and released. It is publicly available today. The document is titled Iran, UFO Report, dated September 1976. It details the incident from the perspective of U.S. military personnel stationed in Iran who gathered information from Iranian Air Force sources. And at the top of the document, in the Standardized Intelligence Assessment Framework, the report is rated across multiple dimensions. Quality of source, reliable. Authenticity of information, confirmed. Subject significance, high. And the overall assessment, outstanding. In U.S. military intelligence terminology, an outstanding UFO report means multiple credible witnesses, radar confirmation, physical effects documented, no conventional explanation identified. The document goes on to describe, in precise technical language, every element of the encounter. The failed weapons systems, the failed communications, the separation of smaller objects from the primary, the landing, the civilian airliner report. All of it, in one declassified U.S. government document that you can read today. This case was also presented at a United Nations panel discussion on UFOs in 1978 by the Iranian government, making it one of the very few cases in history where both a government's military and a separate superpower's intelligence agency documented the same event independently. And yet, outside specialist UFO research communities, almost nobody knows about it, because it happened in Iran in 1976, before the Islamic Revolution, before Iran became what it became, and the political complexity of the source has made the case easy to overlook. That is not a reason to overlook it. It is a reason to look more carefully. Section 6. Honest Debunking. Because this is Vantage Elite, we go through what the skeptics say. Honestly, the astronomical explanation. The most common skeptical explanation for the Tehran incident is astronomical, specifically the planet Jupiter. Astronomer Robert Schaefer and skeptical investigator Philip Klass both argued that the crew of the F-4 had locked onto Jupiter, which was bright in the sky that night, and misidentified it as a structured craft. The rapid color changes could have been atmospheric refraction. The apparent movement could have been the aircraft's own motion relative to a stationary object. This is a legitimate starting point. Stars and planets have been misidentified by pilots before. It happens. The electrical failure explanation. For the weapons and communications failures, skeptics point out that F-4 Phantoms of that era were known to have electrical reliability issues, particularly under high-stress conditions. The coincidence of the failure at the moment of attempted engagement could be just that, a coincidence. Again, this is a legitimate observation. Mechanical failures happen. What the skeptical explanations cannot account for. But here is where the skeptical explanations run into difficulty. Jupiter does not appear on radar as the size of a Boeing 707. The object did. That radar return was tracked and documented by multiple operators. Jupiter does not release smaller objects. The crew of the second F-4 watched two separate smaller objects detach from the primary, on radar and visually. Jupiter does not land in a field south of Tehran and leave a glowing area on the ground. the landing object did. A coincidental electrical failure in an F-4 does not restore itself the exact moment an approaching smaller object turns away. The sequence, failure on approach, restoration on retreat, describes a response, not a malfunction. And the civilian airliner crew, flying in a different part of the sky, describing a cylindrical object with lights. They were not watching Jupiter. The U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, staffed by professional analysts trained to identify misidentification, reviewed all of this and rated it as outstanding and valid. They did not rate Jupiter sightings as outstanding. They rated this case as outstanding. That distinction matters. Section 7. Ending. General Parviz Jafari is in his 80s now. He flew that F-4 as a lieutenant on the night of September 19, 1976. He has told the same story every time he has been asked. In Iran, in the United States, before cameras, before the National Press Club. The details never change. The sequence never changes. The conclusion never changes. He described the moment his weapons system failed, just as he was about to fire, as the most extraordinary experience of his military career. Not because he was afraid, but because he understood immediately, in the cockpit, in real time, that whatever he was dealing with was operating at a level beyond anything he could affect. I tried to fire, nothing happened. And then it was as if something had decided my missile was not going to leave my aircraft. Not that it malfunctioned, that it was stopped. The DIA document exists. You can read it. The radar data was recorded. It is in the file. The witness statements from pilots, ground crew, airport personnel, and civilian flight crews are documented. The landing site was investigated, and the U.S. government rated the case as outstanding. Here is what the Tehran incident gives you that most UFO cases do not. It gives you a government document from a third party, not the country where the incident occurred, not a UFO research organization. The United States Defense Intelligence Agency assessing an Iranian Air Force encounter and calling it exactly what the evidence suggests it was. Something real, something documented, something that no conventional explanation has ever fully accounted for. In 1976, over the skies of Tehran, a weapons system that had never failed in combat was stopped at the moment of attempted use by something that had not been shot at, something that responded to the attempt, and then left. General Jafari goes back to that night often. He has said that in a long military career, with real combat experience, nothing prepared him for what he encountered in the sky above Tehran. What I saw that night, I believe it was not from this world, but I do not say that lightly. I say it because after 50 years, I have no other explanation. Subscribe to Vantage Elite for cases like this, documented, verified, and done properly. Drop a comment. What do you think stopped General Jafari's missile? And I will see you in the next one.